You don't break toxic cycles by fighting harder to be loved. You break them by loving yourself enough to walk away. There is one silent, self-sabotaging habit that keeps many people chained to pain, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. The habit of over-explaining, over-giving, and overstaying in relationships that are clearly toxic. It's the internalized belief that your love can fix them, your patience will change them, or your loyalty will earn the validation you've never received. This one habit, the compulsive need to prove your worth in someone else's broken story, is the very reason you keep ending up in the same emotional prison over and over again. You see, toxic relationships don't always start out as storms. They often begin with a whisper charm, chemistry, attention, and intensity. You start giving and then giving more, thinking that if you just love them harder, they'll finally see your value. But what you're really doing is abandoning yourself. You ignore the red flags. You silence your intuition. You justify their behavior. You shrink. You stay. And the pattern repeats because the one habit you've never questioned is the one telling you to fight for people who wouldn't even pick up the sword for you. This habit is rooted in something deeper, perhaps childhood wounds, past rejection, abandonment issues, or the belief that you're only as worthy as what you can give to someone else. So you try to earn your place in someone's life. You believe that if you sacrifice more, love more, or fix more, you'll finally be enough for someone who was never capable of giving you what you deserve in the first place. This emotional programming keeps you running on a toxic treadmill, always trying, never arriving. Toxic people recognize this habit. They feed off of it. In fact, they select you because of it. They love bomb you, then breadcrumb you. They test your limits, then watch you stay. Every time you ignore your needs and continue pouring into someone who only takes, they gain more control. And yet, the more they pull away, the more desperate you become to pull them closer. That's how this one habit keeps you stuck, because you think leaving equals failure, when in truth, staying is what's slowly destroying you. This cycle conditions you to normalize emotional chaos. You stop asking for peace because you've become comfortable surviving in dysfunction. You make excuses for bad behavior. You hold on to potential. You replay the good times to justify the emotional abuse. And the habit deepens. It turns into a lifestyle, a pattern, a painful identity, the one who always tries to save others even at the cost of losing themselves. But here's the truth. No one tells you this habit doesn't make you kind. It makes you a prisoner. It's not noble to stay where you're being hurt. It's not brave to beg someone to treat you like a human being. True strength is found not in how long you endure pain, but in how quickly you recognize when someone is feeding off your need to be needed. You keep making excuses for bad behavior. You don't even realize you're doing it. Every time someone hurts you, disrespects you, or treats you like you don't matter, you jump in and defend them. Before anyone else can say, that was messed up, you're already halfway through the sentence. They didn't mean it. That right there, that's the habit. That's the trap. It starts small, one comment that stings, one broken promise, one guilt trip. But instead of confronting it, you explain it away. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to seem dramatic. You don't want to be too much. So you minimize what you felt and you give them a pass. What you don't realize is that every time you make an excuse for someone else's disrespect, you're teaching your brain to tolerate it. Your threshold for pain increases. What used to make you cry now just makes you numb. That's not growth, that's survival mode. You're not being kind, you're not being patient. You're being manipulated into believing that love requires suffering. And you've been doing it so long that now, when someone treats you right, you get suspicious. You think there's a catch. Because you've trained your nervous system to believe that chaos is comfort. The worst part? You tell yourself you're being the bigger person, that you're mature, that you're emotionally intelligent. But maturity isn't accepting disrespect, it's knowing when to walk away from it. And emotional intelligence doesn't mean staying silent, it means being honest. You've got this deep-rooted fear that if you stop making excuses for people, they'll leave. and maybe they will. But if the only way they stay is by hurting you, is that even a relationship you want? You are so quick to find the good in people, but when's the last time you did that for yourself? You believe in their potential, their trauma, their story. But what about your peace, your healing, your right to not be constantly explaining why someone treated you like crap? Let's call this out for what it is. You're addicted to rationalizing bad behavior because it's easier than facing the truth. They're not going to change. And they're not meant to. It's not your job to fix them. It's your job to protect you. You can't love someone into treating you better. You can't shrink yourself into being enough. And you definitely can't keep covering up someone else's abuse and calling it loyalty. That's not loyalty, that's emotional imprisonment. Every time you say they didn't mean it, ask yourself this: what would it look like if I believed they actually did? Because intentions don't undo impact. You can't heal from wounds you keep pretending don't exist. People show you who they are. Believe them. Not the version you hope they'll be one day. Not the fantasy in your head. The version that keeps showing up every day with inconsistency, manipulation, and blame shifting. That's the real them. And the more you excuse it, the more you normalize it. One day you wake up and realize you're not in love. You're in a hostage situation where your self-worth is tied to someone else's broken behavior. So it's time to stop twisting yourself into a version of you that can survive their dysfunction. It's time to stop confusing emotional labor with love. And it's time to realize that the only person you need to justify is yourself to yourself. Because the moment you stop making excuses for bad behavior is the moment your healing begins. Not because they change, but because you finally do. And that's when the whole game shifts. You ignore your own red flags. Your body always knows. It sends you messages, warning signs, gut punches. That sinking feeling in your stomach when they text something dismissive. That tension in your shoulders after every call. That hesitation before answering them. That moment of dread right before they walk through the door. You feel it, but you override it. And you don't just override it, you shame yourself for it. You call it overthinking. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, insecure, needy. So you mute the alarm bells and pretend everything's fine. You turn red flags into rose-colored fairy tales and call it love. That is how you abandon yourself. That is the habit. It's not just about ignoring the toxic person. It's about ignoring your own truth. You were taught to distrust your own instincts. Maybe by a parent. Maybe by a past relationship. Maybe by a culture that told you don't be so sensitive. You've got to understand that ignoring red flags doesn't protect the relationship, it poisons it. Because every time you silence your truth to keep the peace, you are creating a war inside yourself. And that internal war, it's what's keeping you stuck. The red flag wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And you were the one meant to hear it. No one else needs to agree with you. No one else has to validate it. If it felt off to you, that's enough. That's reason enough to pause. That's reason enough to question. That's reason enough to walk away. But instead, you play the role. The peacekeeper, the patient one, the one who says, let me just give them another chance. But what if the real betrayal isn't what they did? It's how you keep betraying your own intuition. That's the tough truth. You've been so focused on not losing them, you forgot what it feels like to not lose yourself. You forgot how to trust your gut. You forgot how to believe your own feelings. So you became someone who tolerates confusion, gaslighting, inconsistency, because it's familiar. You need to unlearn that. You need to stop romanticizing emotional instability. You need to recognize that someone making you doubt your sanity isn't love, it's control. And the way out isn't more understanding, it's self-respect. You were not born to be a sponge for someone else's emotional filth. You don't have to carry their projections, their tantrums, their unhealed trauma. You are not their therapist. You are not their emotional punching bag. And you are not obligated to keep proving your loyalty to someone who keeps disrespecting your truth. The red flag was the truth trying to get your attention. And if you keep silencing it, it's going to scream louder. It's going to show up in your body: anxiety, insomnia, migraines. It's going to show up in your thoughts, confusion, self-doubt, paralysis, and eventually, it's going to break you down. That's why the most radical thing you can do is start believing yourself again. You don't need evidence. You don't need permission. If it doesn't feel right, you have every right to walk away, even if nothing bad has happened yet. Your intuition is your superpower. Stop calling it crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not too much. You're just done living a life where you have to ignore your soul to keep someone else comfortable. And the moment you start listening to your gut again, that's the moment you start saving yourself. You don't think you deserve better. At the core of every toxic pattern is one belief. You don't really think you're worthy of more. And I know you'll argue with me on that. Of course I deserve better, you'll say. But your life doesn't lie. If your actions contradict your words, then guess which one is telling the truth. You say you want love, respect, consistency, but you keep choosing chaos, breadcrumbing, and people who leave you questioning your worth. That's not random. That's not bad luck. That's a mirror. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you believe you deserve. And if your self-worth is built on proving yourself to people who can't even love themselves, you're always going to be exhausted, empty, and unfulfilled. This goes deep. Maybe you were raised in a home where love was conditional. Maybe you learned to equate emotional labor with value. Maybe you were praised for being helpful, forgiving, the strong one. And now you think you have to suffer in order to matter. That's not your fault. But it is now your responsibility to unlearn it. Because if you don't, you'll keep building your life around people who reinforce the lie that love is earned through pain. You'll keep tolerating behavior that makes you question yourself. You'll keep living in emotional survival mode. That's the habit. You pick people who make you feel small because that's what feels normal. You chase people who withdraw because you're trying to recreate a pattern you recognize. You confuse intensity with intimacy and chaos with passion. And somewhere in all that dysfunction, you forget that you're allowed to just be loved. Not fixed, not rescued, not earned, just loved as you are. But to receive that kind of love, you have to believe you're worthy of it. And right now, you don't. That's why healthy feels boring, safe feels fake, stable feels suspicious. You say you want peace, but when you get it, you sabotage it because your nervous system is wired for unpredictability. You're not broken, you're just misaligned. You need to rewire your beliefs. You need to surround yourself with people who reflect back your value, not your wounds. You need to stop calling pain love and start defining love as safety, clarity, respect. No one is coming to save you. Not a partner, not a parent, not a friend. It starts with you. You set the bar. You decide the standard. And until you believe you're worth more, you'll keep settling for less. You are not here to prove your worth through pain. You are not here to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's brokenness. You are not here to earn the bare minimum. You were born worthy, full stop. So stop settling. Stop hoping they'll change. Stop rewriting your truth to fit someone else's dysfunction. You don't need to be more lovable. You need to believe that you already are and act like it. At the end of the day, the truth you've been avoiding, the habit that's been keeping you locked in emotional hell, isn't love, it's self-betrayal. Every time you silence your voice to protect someone else's comfort, you betray yourself. Every time you explain away the hurt, you choose their dysfunction over your sanity. Every time you ignore the red flags, you abandon the very part of you that's trying to protect you. This isn't compassion, it's self-destruction dressed up as empathy. And it ends now. Because the only way you're going to break free is by breaking the habit. The habit of making excuses for pain. The habit of pretending confusion is clarity. The habit of calling chaos chemistry. The habit of thinking deserve is something you earn through emotional suffering. You don't need more second chances, you need self-respect. You don't need more patience, you need boundaries. You don't need to fix them, you need to rescue yourself. You keep waiting for the situation to change. But it's not the situation that needs to change, it's you. You need to become someone who doesn't flinch at silence, who doesn't chase what hurts, who doesn't mistake being tolerated for being loved. You need to become someone who listens to that gut feeling and acts on it immediately. You need to stop convincing people to choose you and start choosing yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. This isn't about them, it's about the parts of you still convinced that you're not enough, that you have to hustle for worthiness, that love is something you earn by being more understanding, more forgiving, more available even when it's destroying you. But not anymore. Because once you see the habit, you can break the cycle. You can stop betraying yourself. You can reclaim your voice. And you can finally say, I'm done. Not with love, but with anything that feels like pain and calls itself love. And that moment, that's not just freedom. That's rebirth.